Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Ukraine War Frontline update, hopefully a really quick one for the 15th of October 2023. I've been away this weekend at a bit of a reunion, so my knowledge, my granular knowledge of what's happened is somewhat lacking, so I do apologise for that in advance. JR, who's such a great member of the channel, has done basically these mapping updates to cover the 14th and 15th. We'll have a look at these pins. I'll just be presenting them to you. I don't necessarily know the narrative. I've got a few sources to dip into. An awful lot has been happening over the weekend, and my mind has been somewhat diverted elsewhere. So sorry, not sorry, because I had a great time. Of course, many people along this front line don't have the luxury of being able to do that, so that's always something to bear in mind. Let's look at the northeastern sector, the Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea front line. Interesting, I shared this with you in a previous video. There is a video that's been released of Russian relatives of people in a unit around here saying they're taken colossal losses in the Kupiansk area, and that 40 of the troops around here refused to fight, and they were locked up in some kind of torture chamber in Zaitsev nearby. So that is an indication that although the Russians have made some advances in this area, it's potentially come at quite a cost. Here we have the permanent representative of the Russian Federation to the UN, Nebenzaya, said that the Russian armed forces have already switched to active combat operations on almost the entire front for several days now. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is over. So this is the Russian claim that, and maybe you can look at this and think, well, actually there are quite a few red pins around here, but there are still some blue ones. But we have seen the Russians attacking Avdiivka. We've seen them counterattack in Velika Novosilka and also the Robotyne area. We're seeing them work really hard in the Novomykhailivka area down south of Mariinka itself as well. They're probably on a receiving end of losing ground in Bakhmut, but most other places they appear to be trying to attack. So there's possibly an element of truth to what this guy says, in that the Russians are trying to move to an offensive posture. I don't know whether that's something they can sustain at all. I don't know what that will look like in a week's time, or whether that is just kicking out their last gasp in terms of the capacity they have to do that. Anyway, we're going to go to, well, first of all, just up here near Sinkivka in the Kupiansk front. This is a little gain here as of yesterday. This is a yesterday gain for the Russians near Orliansky, and that's an Andrew Perpetua game. But if you go and really zoom in, it is just some tree lines there that they have taken, so nothing particularly significant. And other than that, I'm sure there's just all the normal kind of fighting around Mariinka, where we know the Russians have taken quite a few losses in making the gains there. There's been activity around Torsk and Serebiansky Forest over the last week, so I presume that is still continuing, but don't take my word for it. Sorry, I'm making some speculations there. Now, we come to Bakhmut, where a few sources are saying, well, first of all, next to Klishchivka, it says Global War Monitor, Donetsk Oblast, Ukraine has pushed the Russians back to the railway, taking back 1.5 square kilometers of land. And that is what we have been witnessing for some time, which is in this area, the Russians being slowly pushed back. But then we have seen them do counterattacks here too. But this is the idea that here they have some success, but that kind of goes, if you look there, right to that's Ukrainian control right to the railway there. Suryat Maps here has some gains for the Russians across the railway line. So the Russian defensive line is to the to the west of the railway line there. I don't know that that's, well, I think that's directly in opposition to what Global War Monitor is saying there. However, all three mappers, and that reminds me, I always forget this, what do the lines on my map actually mean? What do they represent? Please pause the video now if you don't know what the lines mean, and you can check out the key there. So all three mappers seem to agree that the Russians still have this very northeastern section of the railway line under their control. So that's worth bearing in mind. That's Andrew Perpetua going into agreement with the other mappers in that area. But on the other hand, there is Andrew Perpetua said he was going to do this in his live stream the other night, where he's like, I haven't moved it yet, but I'm fairly sure the Ukrainians are here. And we saw Deep State Map move the line by, let's see how much that was. From the railway line, that is about 1 kilometre to the east of the railway line in certain areas. Some were claiming 1.5 kilometre of advance they made in this area. Well, of course, there's going to be grey zone. There's going to be Ukrainian control. So yeah, we can debate exactly where the troops are, but they are moving in the right direction all along this axis here from Klishivka down to Andriivka. And indeed some success towards Zelenopilia as well. A bit of disagreement, as you can see, between Andrew Perpetua and Suriyat Maps, the pro-Russian mapper. Suriyat Maps still has the Russians basically controlling along the railway line or along these water features. But yeah, big gains there over the last, I said big, relatively speaking, over the last week. And they are supposedly pushing the Russians back towards this road that goes up into Opitny. So we'll keep an eye on that one, of course. Some gains here for the Russians along this. That's a railway line as well, I think, coming into or to the south of Bakivka. I think that's a railway line. Yes, so that is some Russian gains there. That's according to Suriyat Maps. We'll look at Suriyat Maps actually. And we have some gains for the Ukrainians actually just coming out. This might not be on the map yet, so I don't know, because JR did the mapping. This might have come out after he did the mapping. So some gains for the Ukrainian situation north of Soledar. The recent Russian bombardment allowed to correct the front lines, showing small Ukrainian army advance in the northern shore of the Bakhmutivka River, close to Mykolaiivka. That is, if we come out here, the Russians being pushed back, or at least the Ukrainians being around. Let's go back to Suriyat Maps. So that's next to here. So it looks like this area, the Russians are further back than they had initially thought. As you can see, that area on my map is still under Russian control for Suriyat Maps. So it's this kind of whole area. This whole area here where the Russians are not in control anymore. So we'll reflect that tomorrow on the map tomorrow. So what else we have? Ukrainian forces control the railroad dam between Andriivka and Klishivka south of Bakhmut. Says this source, says Sarin. I'm not quite sure. The railroad dam. So let's come back out here. I presume that is, here's a railroad. I don't know if that's, these water areas are just around there. As you can see, all the mappers agree that in this particular area, the Ukrainians do have more control east of the railway line. And then just some geolocation. So this is back to the north of Bakhmut. Jubovo-Vasilivka, Donetsk Oblast. Explosion of what is reported as Russian ammunition dump and personnel after shelling by the Ukrainian 56th Brigade. So, the footage of this, unfortunately can't really show you the footage, but some good success for the Ukrainians with their artillery. We'll go and find out exactly where that is. If I can get my coordination sorted. Right, so this is the sort of thing you'd expect every single day, every week. They'll be hitting, both sides will be hitting supply depots and dumps behind enemy lines, as well as logistics and artillery. But Dubovo, Vasilivka, no different from anywhere else there, in receiving some attention from Ukrainian forces. Right, we're now going to come out of Bakhmut and come down to Avdiivka. Now, I've done a whole separate video on Avdiivka. Go and check that out to get an idea of what's happening here. Just really quickly, there are a few sources on movements on the map. Here we have Suryat map saying combats between the Russian and Ukrainian armies are taking place in a quarry northwest of Opitny. Meanwhile, Russian troops fully consolidate their positions in the recently captured Almaz 1 fortifications adjacent to the railway south of Andriivka. So that is just over here. So some success. Again, this isn't noted on my map. This has come out subsequent, but there some successes over in this area. I would think. So, oh no, sorry, that is that's the wrong one. Oops. Yeah, so just over that, they widened. The Russians have widened this. I guess bridgehead they'd formed going upwards towards then this railway here road there. I think that's road coming over possibly railway or vice versa. But they moved up to this area and then they widened it all the way over to here, and they might well have some more success over in this area there, as according to Suryat maps, whilst at the same time fighting in a quarry near Opitny. So that is back over here. That's that quarry just here. So heavy fighting there by the sounds of it. But yeah, I talked you through lots of analyses of what's taken place in Avdiivka. We can see, just to run you through a few of the changes, some Ukrainian gains on the way to Alexandropil, between Alexandropil and Novosibirsk. So there's a big difference there between Andriy Perpetua and Suryat maps mapping the Russian lines there, and then Russian gains all the way up to the railway, as according to, well, actually, although that's Andriy Perpetua, all the mappers now generally agree with the lines around there. As we come down to Krasnohorivka, Suryat maps saying that actually there are gains for the Ukrainians, whereas that wasn't gains. The Russians didn't actually take that. Suryat maps claim that they took it, and now the indication is that the Ukrainians have made some gains, but the Ukrainians said we never counterattacked here. It's that they never took this area. Deep State maps shows some Russian gains on the way to that slag heap, which is far more realistic. They have made some gains here. They just never got as far as taking the slag heap, just like they never got as far as taking the outskirts of Bedichi and then fighting down towards Orlivka, as Rebar was claiming. That just simply didn't happen. And a little bit of rejigging for Andriy Perpetua's map around there. So make of that what you will. I don't think that's Ukrainian gains at all. That is just a lack of Russian gains and some rejigging. Some Russian gains then also to the west of Vodyane, north of Pervomaysky here, where we have Deep State map and Suryat maps admitting that, or claiming that, the Russians have had some success in that sector. So there is definite gains for the Russians around here. No one's denying that, but it's, are these gains worth the vast numbers of troops and equipment that has been expended in taking them? And there's so much footage out there that you can look at if you want to show, a large number of pieces of kit on the move and a large number of pieces of kit getting destroyed in different ways and in different places. So you can go and find that footage freely on places like Twitter. Just put in Avdiivka, it's got a double I, and if you do that search for Avdiivka and then look at the media that comes out, so just, I'm teaching your grandmother to suck eggs here, but you search for Avdiivka and you go and look at media if you want, and then that will give you lots of videos and other bits of media coming out, or you can look at the latest and find out what's happened in Avdiivka, if that is what you want to do. So we're going to move on from Avdiivka ourselves now and go down to Novomykhailivka, which is just to the south of Avdiivka, or south of Mariinka, actually, so past Mariinka. And here we have some successes, as according to Suriyat maps for the Russians here. You can see the difference between Andrew Perpetua and Suriyat maps. This is a place that the Russians definitely seem to want to take, right? It's going to be a case of kind of trying to level up the land here. So you can see the sense of doing this. They have been hitting Novomykhailivka and Praskovivka and Konstantinivka behind it with aviation over the last few months. There is, I think, quite a bit of emphasis being put on this sector. So be interested to see whether that is confirmed by other mappers like Andrew Perpetua, Deep State Maps. But at the moment, Suriyat Maps has that advance. They say that the Russian army is confirmed to advance towards Novomykhailivka from the axis of Slavno, which was an attack that began 4 days ago. So that appears to be a big focus for the Russians. And then we come out of there and come across to the Velika Novosilka salient, where the Russians are having some success again, according to Suriyat maps, in the Priyutne area, and this is the area to the west of Uruzhany and Staromyorsk. The Russians are taking advantage, I think, of the Ukrainians taking a foot off the pedal here, as they've moved potentially some of their forces to the Robotna sector, and the Russians themselves have apparently done that too, but it seems like this might be a slightly easier place now for the Russians to counterattack, since all attention appears to be on the Robotna area. Suriyat maps here says that the situation in this area is that the Russian army retook a position northwest of Priyutne, and that's the area there. Not a vast amount of land, but they are chipping away, as according to Suriyat maps anyway, at this area at the moment. Right, going to go now to the Robotna area just to the west of here, where there is quite a lot of activity, some gains for both sides. Andrew Perpetua has some gains for the Ukrainians between Novopokrovka. Remember, that's not Novoprokopivka, which is down here, very similar sounding name. Novopokrovka and Verbove, some success there. On the other hand, according to Suriyat maps, the Ukrainians have been pushed back by the Russians to the northwest of Verbove, where we had seen some success for the Ukrainians, as according to Andrew Perpetua, getting into the very outskirts, it appeared, or at least pushing the Russians back from the very outskirts of Verbove. Well, now Suriyat maps, and again, not confirmed by the mappers at the moment, but Suriyat maps has some success for the Russians there. Let's talk through that. Here we have, and this might actually be further success on top of what I've just told you. Let's have a look. No, that does look like that was the case, but also some further down here as well. So not quite updated on that yet. That will be done tomorrow. Situation in Zaporizhia front. Russian army launched a series of counterattacks to recapture positions west of Verbove and east of Novoprokopivka, says Suriyat maps. On the other hand, no report says on the Robotna Verbove axis, heavy fighting occurs north and northeast of Kopani. So here's Kopani, you've got Novoprokopivka, you've got Verbove, and you've got Novopokrovka, and that gives you the kind of cauldron there over this. On the right flank of the Ukrainians, as they are coming down this way, the right flank at Kopani, there are initial reports of new areas taken under control by the Ukrainians, but it does need confirmation. East of Novoprokopivka, Ukrainian units try to further push south, as well as east towards Verbove. A Surovikin line is reached. It then says, in the area between Kopani and Verbove, a fairly big group of Russian soldiers, reported as units of 108th Guards Air Assault Regiment, have surrendered to the Ukrainians. So that's been caught on camera. Quite a large number of Russians surrendering there. 65th Mechanized is hitting Russian forces in the fortified network south of Robotna. It is reported that Ukraine has regained full control over this area, paving the way for an assault from the north on Novoprokopivka. Again, fog of war. There seems to be a lot of give and take, push and shove in this area. 46th Air Assault Brigade is trying to advance east of Nova Prokopivka. In the back, you can see Dragon's Teeth as part of the Surovikin line. So that's to say that they have got past this first line there, as according to that video he's referencing. But quite exactly where that is, I'm not too sure. Is this up here? Well, then you would expect to see the Dragon's Teeth behind you. If that's down here, then that's more significant. So L claims about Avdiivka as well, but we've gone there and done that and seen that, so that was out of place. Right, anyway, so that's what is happening around Robotina. As you can see, all the map is showing some changes here. So Andrew Perpetua and Surat map showing some small Russian gains to the east of Nova Prokopivka, although no reports has been saying that actually that's where the Ukrainians are having success at the moment. So it could be that no reports is more recent than those mapping changes, since that was just within the last 10 hours, whereas those mapping changes are, as you can see, those mapping changes are, well, that's from the 15th, but they would have been from this morning. So I don't know. They're either contradictory claims or one is superseded by the other. Some minor Ukrainian gains, according to Deep State map, that we missed from the other day. So we're just a bit of an update there. That's, if you doubt any of you have noticed that line has moved, but just in case you are sharp-eyed, that is just a sign that we have done some rejigging. So thank you to JR for that. Other than that, not too much to report. I mean, what do I think about this sector? I think it's just really tough. I think they are doing all the other things at the moment, such as degrading Russian armor. And if they can keep prodding and probing and gaining small amounts of land, although the Russians will counterattack, as we can see here. But if the net result is that the Ukrainians can chip away and get further and further, then I guess that is worth doing, whilst focusing on all these other ways of degrading the Russians. There are certain areas. I think Novomykhailivka might be a bit of a worry. The aviation being used there is fairly significant. Avdiivka seems to be going well for the Ukrainians, even though the Russians might be taking some land. And Bakhmut, I think, is also going well for the Ukrainians. So it's kind of a mixed bag in certain areas. We'll see how it turns out this week. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.